to Eric's podcast. Dive into conversations about life, family, and business with your host, Eric. Whether you're looking for practical advice, personal stories, or just a little inspiration, Eric's got you covered. Tune in every week to join the journey and get ready to elevate your game. Now, here's your host, Eric.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Eric's podcast. I am your host, Eric. And today, I am joined with Robby Carlson. Very nice to be here. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you. So I was reading a little bit about your bio, and I can see here that you're a father of four, a concrete worker, by day, by night. You're an evangelist. That's really cool. Can you go into a little bit, like a little snippet about what that means? I also noticed that you wrote 6 children's books, which is super cool. You can go into a little bit of the experience about that. But yeah, first let's take a step back and let's kind of bring it to now and talk about, is there anything inspiring or you found really entertaining that happened to you this week or the last couple of weeks?
Well, recently, so I've been working with the youth for about 15 years, and they kind of listen to me, and for some reason their parents think that I have like this special God-given ability to have kids listen to me, and they don't know why. They don't know why that their kids listen to me and not themselves. And so one day I was talking to my boy, and he was just like not listening to me, like, you're my dad, like, what do you know? So then I showed him one of my books, and I said, hey, what does it say in this book? Oh, that's right. That's what it's supposed to be. But like, I wrote the book. Like, what's the difference if it comes from me saying it or if it comes from the book? And so it's just that, I don't know, I'm just a regular parent, and kids don't listen to their parents for some reason.
Yeah. We're going through something similar right now with our 3-year-old, and it's definitely a challenge, but also kind of funny, the excuses and stuff that they'll try to come up with and be like, well, this is just the way it goes. I'm like, okay, well, it's not the way it goes now.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you, what's your drive in terms of, I know being a parent, trying to you just go through life. I noticed in your bio that you talked about you went through a time of being homeless with a family and everything. Can you go into a little bit of detail on what led up to that point, and how did you get through it, and how did you come out on the other side?
Okay, so at the time, I had my wife, and I only had 2 kids at the time, and we were trying to become missionaries, but to go to Japan, and we were supposed to raise like a lot of money, and we couldn't raise that. We raised about 20% within 4 years. So what happened was the missionary organization decided to let us go. They're like, you know what? We can't actually send you. There's nothing we can do to help you. We're not saying that that's not your calling. We're just saying that it's probably not through us. So they let us go. And then shortly after, like a few months later, I my boss came in, grabbed all the keys, and laid me off of work. And so I was a building manager at the time, and I lost my job and essentially my home because we were living there. And they just had a company switch. The new company didn't want to hire me, and the old company was like, sorry, like we got no work for you. There's nothing that we can do for you. So in the span of a few months, I pretty much lost everything. And it was really devastating. You kind of start to second guess yourself and think, what it is about myself, and you start to like really get like really bad, deep depression and deep thoughts. That's not good. And so eventually we were just couch surfing, and we ended up being on my mother-in-law and her boyfriend's place. They had like an extra side room. It was like a room and a little kitchen. It was like 400 square feet, but it's not big
Wow.
enough for a family of 4 at the time. And so trying to go through that was really a struggle. And sometimes I thought about ending it, but luckily I had my family there, and I'm like, what are they going to do if I'm not there? Like, how are they going to survive? Like, I have to figure it out to get out of here, to basically for them. So I just started doing little things, try to get like little wins. And so I was allowed this little patch of grass that it was kind of like our own. There was like a big yard, but I had this little patch of grass. And I don't know about you, but I love the feeling of just stepping on like fresh, nice grass with your bare feet.
Oh yeah, like getting grounded almost.
Yeah, kind of like that. It's just, but I don't like the prickly, dry stuff. It's got to be like the fresh, soft stuff.
Soft,
So
yeah.
So I just worked a little bit every day. I was watering it every day just because I'm like, I need a little win in my life right now. And I watered it every day. And then eventually you would see that there was this one little green patch of grass amongst the whole field, and it stood out like crazy. And I was able to have that moment to be able to be like, okay. And it was just a sense of relief to be like, okay, I can do this. I can overcome this. It just, sometimes it takes time, and you got to take it a day at a time.
So, going back to the missionary, the pursuit of going, was that something you and your wife were just passionate about from the beginning, or did you guys grow into that?
Yes.
How did that come to be?
Okay, so my wife is half Japanese, and she has a heart for Japan. And so she always wanted to become a missionary over there, and I didn't. We had a lot of fights about it. And then one day, I had the opportunity to go to the Philippines for my friend's wedding. So I asked my wife, I'm like, hey, would you like to go to the Philippines? And she's like, yeah. And then we could go to Japan while we were there. So I was just like, well, we'll go and get this Japanese bug off of her, and then we'll never have to talk about it again. And then it backfired. Yeah. So while I was in Japan, I was looking around, and we were on this train, and the train is like 14 car lengths long. It's really huge. There were so many people on it. And then I was looking around, and I said, wow, I think I am the only Christian in this whole entire train. And I just saw this like hopelessness and despair in everybody's eyes. And I was really touched, and I wanted to reach out to them. And I'm like, wow, that's really like hard. Like, they don't even have the chance to say no to the gospel. And then my wife on the back end, she made it so that we would meet a lot of missionaries on the field. She's a very smart woman.
That's good.
So one of the missionaries I was talking to, I told him, I said, like, look, like, I told him that story. And then he looked at me dead in the eyes, and he said, more like all of Tokyo Station. And Tokyo Station has 60 platforms with trains going both ways every minute. And there's malls down there and people walking everywhere. And that's when I was just hit. And I said, okay, if nobody else is going to do it, I'll do it.
That's the way. That's how you do it. So I'm guessing after that, you went over to the other side, and did you start your, how does that work? Like, do you reach out to sponsors, or how? Because I'm unfamiliar with how you would even get started. If if there's a listener listening who does have a passion, how would you go about at least getting started in that process? Like, what is the process?
the way to get started is to talk to your local church. Most churches have like this like umbrella of a whole network of churches that they're connected with. So talk to your pastor. And so what my wife did is we talked to our youth pastor, and he connected us with an organization that's under the same umbrella that was specifically for missions to unreached areas. And what people don't realize is Japan is the second most unreached country in the world. And it actually has open borders, which people are kind of shocked. And so we talked with the missionary organization. We did like a 2-year application process. So they really like vet us. They go through this whole thing. And then it's a big thing of fundraising. So then we start talking to individuals. We start talking to churches. And the missionary organization helps us with that. And we try to align a focus and go through everything. I guess I didn't really explain too well about the Japanese, or the price was too high. In order for us to go, we needed to raise $11,000 a month with the organization. And we were only able to get like 20%.
So, 11,000 a month, is that like commitments from people who donate, or do you need a bigger chunk? Say you're going for a year, you need a bigger chunk to cover the whole year. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So we were going as long-term missions. So as our organization, the deal was we had to go for about 2 years, and then we'd come back for 6 months, or we'd have to go for 4 years, and then we'll come back for a whole year. And that 6 months in the year process is because when you're a missionary and people are giving to you, it's not just you doing the work. It's the body of Christ and everyone working together. And so you got to come back on furlough. And while you're back on furlough, you still need a place in Japan or wherever you're at as well. So now you're paying rent in 2 different locations for like a year.
Yeah, I can see how that's a lot. Did you and your wife, after not being able to raise enough, have you guys ever rethought of just moving over there? Was that ever on the playbook?
Yeah. So this whole process happened about 10 years ago. It was 2018 when I officially got let go with the organization. And the reason why they let me go was because they physically couldn't get us to that country. There was no visa work. They had like 26 visa applications, and I actually qualified for none of them. So
Wow.
there was no option for me to go there through visa work. Like I could go there as a Canadian, and their visa, I'm allowed to go there for like 6 months for vacation, but that's
not enough
you
time.
can't do that. No.
Yeah.
And so they tried everything that they could. They couldn't. I don't have a degree, so that was the main issue. So they're like, we can't get you a job there because no one will sponsor the visa. We don't have enough money, so we can't sponsor you. And unfortunately, we have to let you go. But the cool thing is that when you trust in the Lord and you just keep on relying on His promises, He will reveal Himself and reveal stuff. And so as soon as we were let go with the organization, we went to the Japanese embassy just to see what was going on. And because my wife is half Japanese, we're like, maybe there's something there. So on our own end, we actually found out that she is like a parent. No, her mom is like less than 1,000 people in the world have a dual citizenship with Japan. And because of that, my wife is able to go on a special visa. And what we actually needed for that visa was all of this paperwork to be done. And because I got let go of my job and because I became homeless, we actually moved in with my mother-in-law and we were able to get all that paperwork.
Wow. So, it's okay. Well, what happens next?
What happens next? So what happens next is we actually needed enough money to be able to go on that because they don't want us to live off the system. And so we just kept on praying, kept on working hard, being faithful. And the interesting thing was So last year in the summer, in 2023, I just decided to get my family to be praying every night. So me and my 4 kids and my wife, we just pray every single night. And they love it now. And they've been praying for Japan. And this year, they actually changed the visa laws. And it's most likely that we'll probably be heading over there this year.
That's awesome. Woohoo! So that has to be exciting, though. I mean, you've gone through. How do you feel? Do you feel more prepared? Like, do you feel like you're ready than you were back when you guys first tried?
Yes and no. So I feel like we're ready because we've spent the last 10 years like studying the culture, really learning, really understanding what we are going to have to do and prepare to ourselves to do. But now we are actually not going to be going under any organization. We're just going to be going on ourselves. So we don't have any of that really like background support. And we just have a few people that are praying for us. And we've had a few people pray for us for the last 10 years. And they're super excited to be like, wow, God is faithful in his prayers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's similar to kind of how the disciples got started at the very beginning before the churches and everything got set up, which is really cool because every day can be something life-changing for someone else. And if you let the Holy Spirit guide you every day throughout the day and lead you, I think that, and you don't have the pressures of an organization to have to, what's the word? Like perform, I guess. Because I can definitely, like, you don't like those pressures and stuff in the background. I can see like you wouldn't want that. And this is way better, but also a lot scarier too, because there's more risk. There's more risk involved, right? But that's all the more reason to rely on the Lord even more.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty like terrified of the whole situation, but I'm like, you know what? I know in God's promise, I know he wants me to go there. And he also promises that he closes the flowers, he feeds the sparrows, and how much more will he do it for us? And so I'm like, okay, Lord, like I'm putting my life and my family's life on the line for your glory to show through.
Exactly. Are you going to teach any Taekwondo while you're there? I noticed in your bio that you're a black belt.
Yeah, I got my black belt in my younger years, but Taekwondo is a Korean martial arts, so I don't know if they'll be well received when I go over there.
Oh. Yeah. That's cool. That's funny. Yeah, so that sounds, you said that's going to happen possibly next year, you said, to go over there?
Possibly this year. We're getting all of our paperwork organized. We kind of figured out where we're going to be going. And yeah, we're just going to apply this year and see what happens.
Have you thought about, this is just a random thought, but have you thought about translating your children's book into Japanese?
Yeah, actually we have. Yeah, so my wife, she has her grandfather who lives in Japan. If we can like actually reach out to him, he's actually a translator. So it would be nice. We could pay him to translate the books.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome because then you already have like a gift that you can just give out. Yeah, I really like that. Is there, so you have been working with children in the children's ministry for 15 years. What is something that you see in kids that's like the most common thing, and yet as parents we probably don't realize what it is?
I think the most common theme that I've noticed is that kids at that age are looking for their identity. They're trying to figure out who they are, where they fit in, sense of kind of like loss almost. Like it's a really weird growing experience. And one of the things that I realized with parents is for some reason, they just forget their beginning stages of life. And they don't really remember how it was like when they were that age. Yeah, and so it kind of makes it more of a challenging. I even noticed in my life when I had when I had my kids, like newborns, and we're trying to like raise them and it's just going crazy. And my dad, he's like, how come you don't call me enough? And I had to tell my dad, I'm like, Dad, like, do you not remember when you were my age and you were spending all those hours trying to get stuff going and prepare for your family? Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. And so it's just a reminder for myself, especially, is to always remember where we came from.
Yeah, I think, I know for me, because I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and when I first started the company that we're running now, 4 years ago, our first had just been born, and I remember rationalizing, saying, I need to get this done. I know I'm just gonna, and my wife and I, we had talked, and she was like, yeah, you go do it. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to spend 15-hour days at the office, come in. I basically didn't see, for a year, I didn't see the development of my 1-year-old. And after that year, of course, you're trying to build a business. It's not going to be built in a year. And I knew that, but I also knew that the foundation of it, I could probably build in a year, like a foundation part, and then I could let off and redo it. And I did end up doing that, but I missed out on on a bunch of first things, and I'll never be able to get those back, except through watching video, but that's different. You're not there to experience it. And so when we had our second kid, I'm like, we have to get structure. There has to be work-life balance here. And that's when things changed. I know for me, working in the children's ministry, and I think you're absolutely right, they are searching for their identity. But a lot of them, it's interesting because I found like they're also longing to be loved. And I think as parents, it's easy to get really caught up, at least for me, in the I need to mold you to be the person that you're going to become. I need to make sure that you have, the tools in your tool belt so you can tackle this world and not be swept away in it. And I think that's really hard. That's something that is, for me, I have to keep reminding myself. But then on the other side, it's like, well, you still have to discipline and structure, but you also have to do it in love. But sometimes to them, it's not going to come across as love, even though you're trying to do it as love and you try to explain it, but it's not coming that way. Like, that's what's hard for me as a parent.
Yeah. So one of the things that I heard when I was doing the missions, there's this preacher, and he was saying how we get our identity from our Father, and that's how we see Jesus, or how we see God, is how our earthly father treated us. So if we had an earthly dad who was very distant, then we feel like God is distant and we can't relate. Some stuff like that. So what I took from that is like, wow, how my kids view me is how they're going to view God. And I got to do the best that I can to resemble like Jesus, so that I can help them with their identity and that they have their identity. And I try my best. I fail a lot. I'm not perfect. I'm not Jesus.
That's a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure. And I really try to resemble that with love and kindness and show them who that is. And one of the other things that I also tell myself is how time have you noticed as you got older, time goes by a lot faster?
Oh, 100%.
Right? So time goes faster as you get older. And that's what people are like worried about. Like, oh no, I'm running out of time. It's going to be the end soon. But you also got to remember, for them, time is really, really slow. So
That's a good point.
10 minutes for me will go by really quickly, but 10 minutes for them is a long time. And so just sit with a 10-minute mindset of, I'm going to spend 10 minutes with you, is like the world for them.
Yeah, that's so what do you so yeah, that's a great point. The time difference, yeah, that's something that should be like plaqued on the wall somewhere. Remember, Eric, time.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's a big thing, and I always tell my kids as well, like to forgive me, like I'm sorry for things. Like if it seems unfair, it might be. It's just that I'm still learning as I'm doing this, and I tell that with my oldest one as well, because I'm like, look, you are pretty much my training ground for being a parent. Like I didn't know how to do this before you came along, and they for some reason think that we just been parents forever and we just know what to do.
yeah. Yeah, I remember when I first my 3-year-old, but back when we had just moved here, and we found out that we were going to have him. And it was our first. I went into I have all this stuff just went, and like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna be a dad. How am I gonna be a dad? I can't be a dad. I don't know the first thing about being a dad. He's gonna be looking up to me. I'm gonna be responsible for his action, for like who he becomes. I don't know if I even like me in the first place.
Yeah, and it's the craziest thing how you look at yourself and you're just like, man, I'm so frustrated with these things of these character flaws that I have. And yet your child will look at you like you are God himself and that you are like the best perfect being ever. Like, wow, like my dad can walk so well. Like I still have a hard time trying to do that.
Yeah, I think another thing that I know we're not, I mean, it's gotten a lot better, but it's been seeing your traits it's seeing your bad traits coming out in your kids. That one is like, because it triggers me. Because I'm trying to deal with it. I'm trying to, within myself, and then I see it coming out, and then I have to breathe, Eric, take a breath. This is like your frustration with yourself. This isn't like, don't let it come out on your kid. And I've made that mistake way too many times, the quick responses, and having to come back and be like, I'm sorry, I yelled at you. But oh my word.
Yeah, I had, I think it was like last year, my boy, we have this thing at school called hot lunches. And so we give him money and he's supposed to give it to his teacher. And it was like the last day and he forgot to give the money to the teacher. I'm like, buddy, like now we have to go back and you have to go give it to the teacher. And he's like, no, like I would rather not have to go through that embarrassment of like forgetting. And I said, no, we have to do this because this is a bad character flaw. And I know it's bad because I have the same problem. Yeah, sometimes we're more worried about our reputation than actually getting like a hot lunch and getting what we deserve.
Yeah, why do you think that is? Like, why should we care about necessarily what other people like? I mean, something as simple as, I forgot to give the lunch money. Like, in hindsight, kind of like, that's not such a big deal. Why do you think, I mean, for a kid, I suppose it would be. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, so I actually wrote it in one of my children's books called "The Superpower You Are Born With," and what people don't remember is that we actually have a superpower that we're born with, and that superpower is to be childlike. And we're a culture that is obsessed with trying to be perfect, but we weren't born to be perfect. We were born to fail forward. So as you look at your kids, you just remember that you were there at one time as well. So like my kids is now learning how to walk, but they trip, and then I help them back up, and they're taking step at a time. It's not like that they fall down. They're like, well, I'm never going to walk again. They just keep on going. If you're teaching your kid how to ride a bike, they'll fall down, and then you encourage them, no, we got to get back up and keep on going through these failures, through these hurts, through these pains, because that's how we get better. And if you have this perfect mentality, then you never grow and you'll be just stuck where you're at.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree with that. Always get back up. I think my first go-to, especially in super challenging situations, and when I've had businesses fail, I've had projects fail, and I don't know how I'm going to pay for rent this next month, stuff like that, and it's just find a quiet place, get on your knees, cry out to the Lord, and then wait and listen. Find a still, quiet spot. And I think, and that has never failed. And I've talked about it in previous episodes, but I noticed that in your bio, there's a little snippet about receiving some sort of prophetic insight about your marriage. I also had something similar happen to me, but I would be curious on what your story is around that. Was it? Yeah, I'm curious. What's your story around the prophetic insights? How did that happen? Was it through somebody? Was it directly to you?
Yeah, I actually wrote it. We wrote it and we framed it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So the story was I went to Bible college and I came back. So while I was at Bible college, someone said to me, or one of the teachers said to the class, but it resonated with me. He's like, look, if you search for God first, then he will provide you a spouse because he knows what you need. He knows where you're at. And so I took this to heart and I'm like, okay, Lord, I'm going to search for you first. So now give me my spouse. And it didn't work that way. So then after when I left the school, I was just kind of like really shook it. Then I'm like, okay, Lord, you know what? I just want you. I'll be okay being single for the rest of my life. And then my wife shows up at church. And I just instantly knew that she was the one who I was going to get married to. And I was like, wow, like, this is weird. Like, Lord, like, I just said that.
I'm okay being single.
Yeah,
okay?
I'm okay. I'm okay being single.
And then you're doing this to me.
I'm like, you should have put her in my life like a month ago when I was looking
exactly.
Yeah. And so when I came back from the school, I was gone for a year. My wife started attending that church while I was gone. So when I came back, like everybody knew me and everybody knew her, but we just didn't know each other. And so she spent that time trying to get to know me. I thought it was her trying to that she was like she was pursuing me is what I thought. And so I'm like, okay, what scares girls away the most? My personality. I'll just show her who I am, and she's just going to say no. And so I showed her my personality, and it backfired. So, so what happened was after Bible college, and because I only wanted to be with the Lord, I started to write a journal for every day of my life. And I was saying, you know what? God's going to do such great things for me. I'm going to write a book about it so that people can experience it. And then I could sell the book for lots of money. And after a month, I stopped writing. I just kind of gave up on it. But during this month is actually when I was meeting my wife. And so one day when we went to like a youth event. So I was helping out my buddy with the youth, and she was there. And I drove her home, and my friend was with me. And I told my friend at night, I said, you know what? I think I'm going to get married next year. And I think I'm going to get married to that girl. I didn't even know her name. And my buddy was like, oh, dude, like if you get married next year, like that's not far away. But if you get married to that girl, I'm going to freak out. So I wrote it in my journal. And then afterwards, we ended up getting engaged, and my wife decided, or my then fiance decided to go through all my stuff, thinking that it was okay because we're going to get married. And so she found this because I completely forgot about it, and she framed it. And when I said that to my friend, it was like literally to the day, a year later, we got married.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. I could read it to you if you'd like, but you
Sure.
got to, it's unedited, so it's bad grammar, and it was a 20-year-old who wrote it. Goes, bullets, my only weakness, but instead of bullets, it's women. Actually, I think I'm weak against bullets too. So bullets and women, my only weaknesses. Well, I have another weakness, but I'll get to the point. I don't even drink coffee, and I said yes. Last night, I was talking to my friend about her all night long. I would say stuff like, I'm going to get married next year. My friend laughed and told me that a year's not far away. Then I was like, she is going to be the one that I marry. He said if I got married next year, he would be happy for me. But if I married her next year, he would trip out. Is this the Holy Spirit prophesying or me saying nonsense? Well, today I talked to her, and one thing led to another, and we are engaged. Haha, just kidding. She doesn't drink coffee either. So next thing led to another, and we were going to take the SkyTrain to God knows where and God knows what. And we're going to do this Tuesday. And so what we ended up doing for a date the next day was we got on the SkyTrain, and I said, okay, I'll pick the stop and you pick the destination. So I just picked up a stop, and then our first date was at Home Depot.
Nice. Home Depot, the good dating spot for sure.
Yeah, and it's cool how God was able to do that in my life. Like even in my prideful arrogance of me wanting to write a book about my life and how to make money, I was able to do that one little prophecy, and it really helped me whenever I'm struggling with my wife, like whenever we're fighting, and I just reflect, saying like, no, God has ordained this. Like I've written it down. It's reassuring to me, and it reminds me of the verse where he talks about when I put join together a man and woman, let no man separate. And so I'm like, okay, God has joined us together.
Yeah. We've had, it's very similar. Well, not the same thing, but similar in terms of one of the things that we do is every time we're frustrated or mad at each other, you don't want to have any like physical type of, you don't want to hug, you don't want a little kiss on the cheek, you don't want to do that. And so what we started doing a couple years ago is we would break the ice and hug or a kiss on the cheek or whatever. And oh my man, it works so well, because it's like, you know, our we're not enemies. You know, the enemy is the what you can't see. It's the powers and principalities, and it's those like trying to break you up, and trying to keep you apart. And so you break that to come back together, and then any argument suddenly just turns into a. And the thing is most of the time I've found that most of the time it's not. Both people are right. It's just a different way of. It's how you're saying it. Like I don't actually have a problem with what. It's just I'm receiving it in a weird way, and I feel like that's a lot of what. Yeah, okay, for sure, some things might be annoying, and you might be holding a grudge, and it's rubbing you the wrong way, and you have to let it go. That's true, but I feel like a lot of stuff is just different points of view coming at it in a different angle or a different way, and neither party is willing to stop and ask more about. Okay, I or repeat the question back. Say, this is what I heard you just say. Is that really what you mean? Because most of the time it's not, and they'll rephrase it. But you get so caught up.
Yeah, definitely with time you grow. Because like the funny thing is like your spouse knows you the best. And when they talk about something, it's usually an insecurity of our own, and we don't want to address it. And it's kind of like what they say, don't look at the log in someone else's eye, look at the speck in your own. But the thing is, when you are married and you're one, when you look at each other, it's a speck in both of your guys' eyes that you're trying to get out.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. But one of the things that I like to also encourage is that when you go through these battles with your spouse and you go through these like trials of like hardship, instead of looking at it like, oh, this is hard and I should get out, it's more of this is a time for us to have a better bonding experience. So my wife, when we first got married, her parents are not Christian. She's the only Christian in her family. And that's one of the things that attracted me to her, because I knew that her faith was authentic. And so her family's like, don't get married. Go and live with each other first. Figure out if you like each other and then just move on. And we decided like, no, we're going to make the decision that it's just going to be us and we're going to work through this. And because we made that decision and said death to all other options, when we came to that homelessness area, I never felt my wife was going to leave me. And we were going to work through it. And these were just things in our life that built us to be stronger together. It's kind of like when the army guys, when they're like fighting on the beaches of Normandy, like when they're in that foxhole, that person that they're next to is like their best friend, and they have like a relationship with them that they will have with nobody else. And if we stop going into those foxholes, then we can't really build that relationship with the one who we love.
Mm-hmm. How did the kids? I'm guessing the kids were pretty young when you guys were dealing with couch surfing and all of that. How did can you go into a little bit more on you and your emotional state back then? Because I could only imagine that it was pretty tough. Especially, well, I mean, I guess you guys had friends offering their couches and stuff like that. So you guys got back up on your feet. But emotionally, how did you deal with that?
So my boy was like 2.5, 3 at the time. And my girl, she was just like a newborn, 6 months to about a year. So they don't actually remember any of the experience at all. So that's good for them. It was just a hardship for my wife and I. It was just so cramped, and we couldn't even really have any intimacy between each other because it's just so cramped, and we had nobody. The funny thing about you saying that we had friends willing, we actually didn't really have friends willing. Before I became a missionary, I had a lot of friends, and everybody was like cheering us on, like, yeah, you're going to go to Japan, you're going to do great. But as soon as I got accepted with the organization and started at fundraising, they just all disappeared. And it changes the aspect because now people think of you as like you're this holy being, and you're like, no, I'm just a regular person like you. There's no difference. I just kind of decided that I wanted this as a career, I guess. So they start viewing you differently, and they start distancing themselves from you. So because of that, there was this distance. So we went to my mother-in-law and we stayed with her for about 3 or 4 months. And it was just really damaging, but you just keep on pursuing the Lord. And you're like, look, like, I have to hold strong on the faith because he's pretty much all I have. If I didn't have him, if I didn't have my kids, I probably would have ended it. And you keep on trying to do these little wins, and you keep on doing these little wins to kind of help you get out of that mindset. Whether that little win is like, I'm going to brush my teeth every day. And then after a week, you're like, I'm going to now floss my teeth every day. And then now I'm going to use mouthwash. Like, you just do these little things. I ended up writing one of my first short stories that was horrible, but I needed that time to get these little wins to show myself that I am adequate and to tell myself that I can get through these things. And then afterwards, we went to my parents' place and we just had like a room for the 4 of us. It was like super tight, and we just needed to get our own place. And so finally, we were looking for a place to live, and someone accepted us even though I didn't have a job. And I was really, really shocked because when I was a building manager, I wouldn't have hired me. I'm like, sorry, like, it sucks to be in your situation, but I can't help you. And so somebody eventually we were able to have like enough money to pay for like the first month's rent. And then I tried my hardest to get like whatever job that I could to just keep on paying rent. And eventually I got into sanitation. And the reason why I decided to change career paths, because I said, look, I could go back into building management, but now if I lose my job, I might lose my home again. Well, if I go into a separate career path, if I lose my job, at least I still have my home. But if I lose my home, then at least I still have my job. They're not connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you go through the sanitation place, the first week was like the hardest. It's like, wow, like, where has my life gotten me into? What is this? And then after that, you start seeing the money come in, and you're like, you know what? It's not that bad.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? The first week, was it just like really hard work, or was it?
Oh, I
really...
was cleaning. I was cleaning porta potties.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ouch. Yeah, I've been in some pretty nasty ones.
Yeah. So when I was in that situation, I just decided to myself, I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to do the best job that I can. I'm going to do the best service. And eventually I got to the point, I was there for about a year. I got to the point where customers were fighting to have me at their sites. And when I would go to sites, people would line up and wait for my job to be done. They would apologize if they were in my way. But most of the other people who are working there, they're just being treated like the product that they were working on. And with that, I learned a big value of just having integrity with your work, doing the best that you can, being nice to people, but not being like a stepping stone, like still having like a raw. So, for example, I wouldn't fight people if they went into one of the toilets while I was there. I would knock and ask them nicely to get out, because I need to clean it. And if they didn't listen, I just simply didn't clean that toilet. And I went on to the next one. And then eventually people learned, like, oh, we want these toilets to be clean. And and this guy's so nice and he's not fighting us. Like, what? So they just ended up leaving me alone, being nice and respectful, and just have a smile on your face. And people start to look at you and they wonder why you have such a joyful life while you're in such a bad position. And they think that you're like on some sort of drug, but you just keep on having that mentality that going through, and you'll notice that the people around you will start to be affected. And then in turn, it starts to affect you. It makes your mood better. And so it's just step by step, day by day, doing these little wins, doing the best that you can, remembering like, hey, no, I can do this because I've done this. And eventually you'll get out of there.
Yeah, I love that. That's definitely good advice. Really for anyone who wants to get started with something, but yeah, especially for coming back up or building yourself back up from the ground. And I think we're gonna go ahead and start wrapping the show up a little bit. What does the future hold for you? I know that you mentioned you probably going to Japan this year, which is exciting.
Yeah. So the future, what holds for me for the future right now is, yes, you got to also trust in the Lord and focus on what his promises are for you. But I've learned that I can't just be like, okay, I'm going to Japan and neglect everything else. So my focus right now is to work on my children's books, to get them out there. They're a little bit like self-help kind of thing, and I'm working on that. At the same time, I'm going to be applying to Japan. And then once I get accepted, we have about 3 months, and then we got to fly out there. So we're kind of preparing to go, but we're also preparing if it's not our timing, because that's what I've learned in the past. And trying to be like, okay, what are we going to do? And God's like, great, now I want you to go and give up everything. So then we'll go do that.
Yeah, the wait until he's opened the door. This is I've talked about this in the past where if you try to just barge in and it's not ready yet and God hasn't finished, then you're barging into like a construction site, and it might not go too well for you. But if you be patient and wait on him, because the Bible says wait on the Lord. If you be patient and wait on him, he'll open the door and it'll be beautiful, and everything on the other side and it's all set up for you. So yeah, that's great. Do you have any books or podcasts or anything that are some of your favorites that you like? Or you listen to?
Am I allowed to say my favorite book is the Bible, or do I need to pick something else?
You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, so one of the ones, my favorite book is the Bible, and I like to read it over and over again. One of the things that I feel like I do differently, and I encourage people to do, when you read the stories of the people, really reflect and know that they're real people. And I try to read it so that I'm like, what are they experiencing right now? How are they feeling in this situation? What are some other ways that they could probably get out of it? Or how would I be in that situation? And that's how I really learn and grow, is just saying, okay, how can I apply this to myself? And then I look at the people, I'm like, wait, no, these are just regular people. If God can use them, why can't he not use me?
I love that. What's the in your opinion, what's the main takeaway that the viewers should take from this episode?
I think the main takeaway is to, even though if everything is kind of stripped from you and you have nothing, to know that you are not at zero. You still have all those past experiences that you can build upon. You are a different person. You're bigger, you're stronger. And to just keep on growing from where you're at, and to never think that you're at zero and that there's nothing left for you.
And how can the listeners find you, help you with your business or whatever? And how can they find you, connect with you, reach out?
Yeah, the best way to find me is robbycarlson.com. That's where all my books are at. If you want to have a copy for yourself, you could just go to any local bookstore and ask for them. And if you can't afford them, then go to your local library and ask them to get you a copy.
Awesome. Robbie, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. I hope maybe we can have you back on in another episode. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Have a
thank you.
great one.
You too.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Welcome to Eric's podcast. Dive into conversations about life, family, and business with your host, Eric. Whether you're looking for practical advice, personal stories, or just a little inspiration, Eric's got you covered. Tune in every week to join the journey and get ready to elevate your game.